On a quiet Thursday afternoon in October 1998, 11-year-old Rachel Prescott vanished while walking home from school. She was wearing her school uniform, her favorite sneakers, and a silver heart-shaped necklace given to her by her father. No one saw her after she left the school gates. No one heard a scream. No body was found. For 20 years, disappearance haunted the town of Cedar Creek, Pennsylvania. That is, until a traffic stop in 2018 changed everything. Rachel Prescott was a bright, imaginative girl with a love for stories and drawing. Her mother, Angela, described her as intensely empathetic and wise beyond her years. She had just turned 11 and was in the 6th grade at Cedar Creek Elementary. On the day she vanished, it had rained lightly in the morning, but the skies had cleared by the time school let out at 2:45 p.m. Rachel typically walked home, a 10-minute journey through a suburban neighborhood. Witnesses saw her leave the school, chatting with her best friend, then turning the corner onto Maple Street, which led toward her home. That was the last confirmed sighting. By 4 p.m., when Rachel hadn't returned home, her mother grew worried. She called neighbors, then the school. By 5:30 p.m., police were notified. A search began that night, with over 100 volunteers combing the neighborhood, woods, and nearby creek. Police found Rachel's backpack intact behind a bush 2 blocks from her home. Her notebooks were dry, suggesting it had been placed there recently. But Rachel was gone. No signs of struggle. No witnesses. No leads. The Cedar Creek Police Department, though small, treated the case with utmost seriousness. They interviewed every teacher, student, and known sex offender in a 20-mile radius. Rachel's father, David, who lived in another state, was investigated and cleared. Her mother, Angela, passed a polygraph. Rumors swirled in town. Was it someone from neighborhood? A stranger passing through? The media picked up the story. Missing Angel of Cedar Creek, headlines read. Candlelight vigils were held. Oprah even mentioned the case briefly in a segment about missing children. But as months passed, tips dwindled. Rachel's necklace, a silver heart pendant engraved with RP, was never found. By 2001, the case was considered cold. Angela never moved from their house. She kept Rachel's room the same. She kept the porch light on every night for 10 years. By 2010, Cedar Creek had changed. New families moved in. Rachel's story became a whispered cautionary tale for new parents. Angela, older now and visibly worn, rarely left her house. But Rachel's name never faded entirely. A local podcaster included her story in a Lost Girls of Pennsylvania series. Internet sleuths picked it up. Reddit threads dissected timelines and suspects. A few amateur investigators revisited the scene, but no new evidence ever surfaced. Until 2018. On a foggy November morning in 2018, state troopers pulled over a silver Honda Accord near Harrisburg for a broken taillight. The driver, a man named Derek Yates, 52, seemed nervous. Officers ran his ID and found no priors, but his behavior raised suspicions. A routine search of his vehicle revealed something chilling. In the glove compartment was a small jewelry box. Inside was a tarnished silver necklace, a heart pendant, engraved, RP. The officer who found it, Trooper Jenna Lynn, didn't connect it at first. But back at the station, something about the pendant bothered her. That night, off-duty, she Googled RP Missing Girl, Pennsylvania. Rachel Prescott was the first result. The next morning, the necklace was sent for forensic testing. It still had trace DNA on its clasp, not just Rachel's, but male DNA as well. Derek Yates had no criminal record. He'd lived in several towns over the last 25 years, mostly working construction jobs, but digging into his past revealed a chilling pattern. In 1998, he had briefly lived in Cedar Creek. Neighbors at the time remembered him as quiet, a loner who rented a room in a house on Maple Street, the same street Rachel disappeared on. In fact, his rented room had been in a house directly facing the bush where Rachel's backpack was found. Yates denied everything, claimed he bought the necklace at a pawn shop years ago, that he'd never even heard of Rachel Prescott. But forensic evidence told a different story. DNA on the pendant matched Yates. Old tenant records verified by utility bills confirmed he lived on Maple Street. A photo of his 1998 pickup truck matched a vehicle spotted in a blurry background of a school security tape taken the day Rachel vanished. Police obtained a warrant to search Yates' current home. What they found would horrify even the most seasoned officers. In his basement was a hidden door disguised as a shelving unit. Behind it, a soundproof room. Mattress, restraints, notebooks filled with cryptic entries and sketches of young girls. Among the items was a Polaroid photograph, a girl, gagged, eyes wide with fear. She wore a Cedar Creek elementary uniform. It was Rachel. Forensic teams dated the photo to late 1998. It confirmed that Rachel had been alive after her disappearance. But no remains were ever found. Angela was notified about the arrest and the discovery. When police showed her the necklace, she broke down. She had given Rachel that pendant for her 10th birthday. The image of her daughter in that Polaroid was the first confirmation she'd had in 20 years that Rachel had been kidnapped and held. The community rallied around Angela. Old friends, retired officers, and reporters revisited the story. But the grief was overwhelming. Angela said in an interview, "Knowing what happened doesn't give me peace. It gives me a different kind of pain. But at least I know she didn't just vanish. Someone did this, and he's going to pay." Derek Yates initially pled not guilty, but the evidence was too strong. DNA, the necklace, the Polaroid, the journal entries. Facing life in prison, he eventually confessed. He had watched Rachel for weeks, said he never meant to hurt her, but couldn't stop himself. He admitted to luring her into his truck and drugging her. What happened after that remained vague. He claimed Rachel died of illness a few weeks later, and he panicked and disposed of her body in a remote area. He refused to say where. To this day, her body has never been recovered. Rachel's case changed Cedar Creek forever. The town established the Rachel Prescott Safe Walk program to protect kids walking home. Angela created a foundation for missing children. Each year on the anniversary of her disappearance, a light is projected into the sky from the schoolyard. Angela keeps the necklace on her bedside table. It took 20 years to find a clue. I hope the next mother doesn't have to wait that long. Rachel's story reminds us of the power of persistence, the cruelty some are capable of hiding, and the fact that no case should ever truly be considered cold. Sometimes the smallest detail, a necklace, a broken taillight, can unlock a truth buried in silence. In the weeks after Derek Yates' confession, law enforcement scoured acres of rural Pennsylvania where he claimed to have panicked and buried Rachel. Cadaver dogs, ground-penetrating radar, even drones were used, but nothing turned up. Every site led to a dead end. Authorities began to suspect Yates wasn't telling the full story. Something felt off. He seemed to revel in the attention. His journal entries, many written in a childlike scrawl, hinted at multiple victims. One entry read, "She was my first, but not my last. Some left, some stayed." Investigators widened the search. Over 200 notebooks were removed from his property and sent to behavioral analysts. A disturbing pattern emerged: dates, coded names, maps, and symbols resembling coordinates. Analysts suspected he had kept more than just Rachel. But one journal stood out. It was older, worn, tucked behind insulation in the basement wall. Inside, a single page had 3 words, scribbled hastily. "She's not dead." At first, they assumed it was delusion or manipulation. But then came a breakthrough. A retired postal worker from Cedar Creek came forward. She had kept old packages and mail that never got delivered. One of them from 1999 was addressed to a R. Prescott in West Virginia. It had never been opened. Inside, a child's drawing. A house on a hill. A girl in a blue dress. In the corner, written faintly, "I'm okay, Mommy. I'll come home when he lets me." The handwriting matched Rachel's from her school notebooks, and the postmark date was 10 months after she disappeared. Suddenly, everything changed. Investigators now believed Rachel may have lived far longer than anyone thought. Maybe even years. Was Yates lying about her death? Was she still alive? Then, in January 2019, 6 weeks after Yates' arrest, a construction crew broke ground on an abandoned farmhouse 30 miles outside Cedar Creek. The house had been boarded up since the early 2000s. In the root cellar, workers found something chilling. A child's shoe. Small, worn, still muddy. Inside, initials drawn in faded ink. RP. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. Nailed into one of the beams above the shoe was a second Polaroid. This time, the girl in the picture wasn't Rachel. She looked younger, and the photo was dated 2003. For 20 years, everyone believed Rachel Prescott was the only victim. But that illusion shattered with a single photograph found nailed to a beam in a forgotten cellar. The girl in the second Polaroid wasn't Rachel. She had dark curls, a missing front tooth, and terror behind her eyes. She looked about 8 years old, and she was holding a newspaper dated June 18, 2003. The farmhouse was soon sealed off as a crime scene. Forensic teams moved in. Hidden compartments were found in the walls, containing dozens of VHS tapes labeled only with dates. As investigators reviewed the footage, a disturbing realization emerged. Derek Yates had recorded everything. The tapes showed years of surveillance. Playgrounds, schoolyards, parking lots, but some were worse. Interior footage, a room, children, fragments of abuse, cries, pleas, faces blurred by time, but some clearer than others. One tape, dated December 1998, showed Rachel sitting on a mattress, drawing on a notepad. Another, dated 5 years later, featured the girl from the second Polaroid. This girl was eventually identified as Melissa Carter, who had gone missing from Altoona, Pennsylvania, in the summer of 2003. Her case had gone largely unnoticed in the national media, a presumed runaway, dismissed early due to family issues. But now, she was confirmed as another victim of Yates. Melissa's family had never stopped looking. When the FBI showed her mother the photo recovered from the cellar, she collapsed to her knees. The same week Melissa vanished, Yates had taken a temporary roofing job in Altoona. It wasn't a coincidence. But here's what shocked investigators even more. Melissa Carter had disappeared 5 years after Rachel was said to have died, meaning Rachel may have still been alive when Melissa was taken. So the question changed. If Rachel was Yates first, and Melissa wasn't the last, how many others had there been? Analyzing Yates' notebooks revealed a disturbing pattern. Each journal seemed to represent a specific chapter in his twisted life. And buried deep within the entries were fragments, names, initials, and chilling phrases like blue dress, brown hair, gone too soon. The second didn't cry as much. Third, girl like birds. At least 5 distinct victims were hinted at, but only 2, Rachel and Melissa, had been identified. The FBI created a special task force, Operation Backtrack. Their goal? To link Yates to other disappearances between 1998 and 2010, when his journals seemed to stop. A pattern began to emerge. Every time Yates took a short-term job in a new town, a young girl would vanish. Sometimes the connection was faint. A girl missing from a festival in 2001. Another from a church group in 2006. But no bodies, no names, just ghost trails. Until one tape changed everything. Inside one of the farmhouse's sealed vents was a tape with no label, just a single sticker. Don't watch. Investigators watched it anyway. The footage opened in darkness. A faint hum of a fan. Then a light flickers on. A girl, maybe 12, blonde, sitting on the same mattress scene in earlier tapes. But something's different. She's staring directly at the camera. Then she speaks. My name is Maya, and if you find this, I need you to tell my mom I didn't run away. She recites her full name, her birthday, her address. She was from Ohio, reported missing in 2009, but her final words chilled even the hardest agents. The first girl, Rachel, tried to escape. He said she almost made it. He said she made it to the road, but a truck hit her. That statement sent shockwaves through the investigation. No record existed of a hit-and-run matching Rachel's description. but old archives from Cedar Creek mentioned a Jane Doe who had been struck by a semi-truck on Route 72 in December 1998, just 3 miles outside town. The girl was never identified. The driver, who had fled the scene, was never found. And most telling, the report stated the victim had no ID, no belongings, and no shoes. But a small scar on her wrist matched one Rachel had from a bike accident. Authorities exhumed the body. DNA results confirmed it. Rachel Prescott had died trying to escape. She'd survived captivity for weeks, maybe months. Long enough to plan an escape. Long enough to run, but not long enough to make it home. Angela Prescott was notified. She wept, but this time, she said she felt something close to peace. She fought. She didn't just vanish. My baby girl fought to the very end. In March 2019, Yates was convicted and sentenced to life in prison without parole. But during a psychiatric evaluation at the state hospital, he made a chilling confession to his doctor. They think they found them all, but they missed one. She's still out there, and she's waiting for me to come back. When asked for her name, he just smiled and whispered, "You already have her picture."